If you don't know me, I'm David Roth. I'm the head of the middle school. This is Jenny Whichard, our assistant head. Thank you for coming. We are going to hopefully have you, in a not too long amount of time, understand more about the move to 7th grade. So our 5th and 6th, some of you have been in through 5th, in 5th, some of you have just come this year. But 7th and 8th tends to be a different setup, a different sort of structure. The biggest thing, kind of the theme today is same but different. And so you'll see that a lot of the things are very similar, and a lot of what you've gotten used to, which is hopefully helping your child, is the same. There's also a lot of things that are different that are developmentally appropriate. So I'll run through learning more about our 7th grade. So one of the big shifts is moving from a homeroom, which is, one teacher sees your child a lot through the day, at least 3 times, to an advisor system, where your child will be in a class with one of these teachers, but that's the only time they'll see them other than the morning and the afternoon. The advisory system is very similar, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But these are our advisors this year. They're, as you can see, content-specific teachers, which is the other really big change, is they go from teaching, your child's teachers teach 4 classes a day in history, English, lit, and math, to being specific of where these teachers teach it all day long. But the advisory system is very similar to the homeroom system, which we'll talk about. So these are some of the people. You may know some. Ms. Krause, a lot of your students do have or will have next semester in Latin. The rest of them you probably don't know as well, but they're all really great as well. The team of wraparound support will continue. You may know some of these people. We have Mr. Gordon, our counselor. Ms. Tucker, our reading specialist. She continues to help in 7th and 8th grades, providing support for reading. Ms. Stewart, who does both the math specialist and learning services position, will continue to support in math and in other areas with accommodations. Ms. Klutz continues to push in English classes to support with writing acquisition. And then Ms. Love will continue to work on our social emotional programming, which actually gets to be probably larger in 7th and 8th grade. There's more opportunities to get connected social emotionally, because it's often where students need a little more support sometimes, as you may know or may start to find. So some of the similarities. So our Pride program is the same. You probably know Pride by now. I've talked about Pride a lot. Your kids probably they should know it. Whether they love it, I don't know. But the idea behind Pride is it's a consistent behavior management program. It's positive. We do Pride banners. Yesterday we had a big drawing for kids. I think Alexa actually won. Did she mention that, Dustin? She did. The Pride banner drawing is basically if the more times you get a Pride banner, the more opportunities you have to win. And so we randomly pick a kid, 2 kids in each grade, and they get either a free dress or 1 day off of homework from one class, or some other things. And so I just remember Alexa was happy. I'm sure the other kids were happy too, but I remember thinking she was really excited. Student learning profile continues, so that'll go with them into the 7th grade. That's that document you got in Parent Converses that talks about accommodations and strategies. It gets updated, as it goes along. It's a living document, so we'll talk about the transition meeting we do a couple times in June and August later. Jen will go over that, I think. But we'll look at that document and see how to reframe it for next year as the year goes on. We continue with a lot of executive functioning support. So in our advisory, which is called Good Morning McLean, twice a week we'll spend time around this. Jenny will get into the specifics on that. But we have daily checks in each class. We continue to assign planners, continue to use the test calendar. The portal becomes a little more important actually because there's just a little bit higher rigor academically, so more information is posted there. A lot of that you'll be very used to, your child will be used to. It shouldn't feel different for them. It should feel very consistent. Mindfulness continues to weave its way through. It's a big part of the program. We'll do it each morning in advisory. We'll do it in most classes as they start. And as I mentioned before, the specialists and counselors. So this is where I usually get the most questions, the biggest change. So we learned this year, we're getting smarter. On the back of your handouts is a full schedule of this. We used to just have the very small one in the PowerPoint. People rightly were like, what do I need, like a magnifying glass? And so you have the full one there. I will spend a little bit of time going through this because the schedule changes have sort of practical changes, but also have like curricular and pedagogical differences from this year. So you'll see the day starts the same and the end is the same. It's just advisory, not homeroom, but you're still there at 20 minutes in the morning doing team building, doing some organizational support. Then the day's a little bit shorter. This is actually a little, 3:05, 3:15, maybe 3:10 to 3:15. I think next year we'll continue our current schedule, but we have a little more time for lunch than we used to, and so we lost a little bit of time at the end of the day, but it's usually fun. The kids are packing up and it's leaving. But you can see that they have 6 academic classes 5 times a week. That's really the big shift. And so history, which is only 4 times a week, science 4 times a week, goes to 5 times a week. The other big shift is language now. You can see here this particular student's in sign language, which I'll go over in a second. That's 5 days a week as well. So it becomes more academic focused than some of your big academic courses. Language is interesting. In the spring, we'll send out to you a choice of what language your child would like to take for next year. We do recommend something based on our understanding of your child, the talking to the teachers. It's still your choice. Spanish and Latin are two of the choices, and then sign language is opened up for the first time for your children. So sign language, this year we have like 12 kids taking it, which is a huge number for us. There's pros and cons to sign language. The pro is that kids love it. If you're tactile and more kinesthetic with learning, it's usually really good for them. There's some college admissions questions that come up later on. None of that really affects middle school, but the purpose of language in middle school for some kids is to get them bumped up when they go to upper school. So some kids who do well in any of those languages can start in a Latin 2 course as a freshman or things like that. So you can get to an AP level if you're interested. So a lot more to come on language later, but just something that's different, but the same, from 6th grade. We continue to split English and literature, so again, which is wonderful for us, 40 minutes a day of both reading and writing. Math will be either Math 7, and for some students pre-algebra. That's something that we work on as the year goes on to determine the best placement for your child next year in math. Our science is life science with Mr. White, and our history subject, social studies, is geography and world cultures, Ms. Jansen. We also have health once a week for the whole year, which is a little bit more than they have now. It's called Healthy Choices. So they'll have PE every day of the week, but one of those PE days throughout the year will be Healthy Choices. And that focuses on physical, social, emotional safety, mental health. We go into relationships, internet safety, self-image. So it's a little bit more in depth on some of the needs of where they are. We do a lot of it through technology, through the lens of technology, because that's how a lot of kids are dealing with things social, emotionally, bad and good. So we try to do it through that area. Another fun thing with advisories, we have advisory lunches, which is a bit of a perk in 7th and 8th grade. So once a quarter, the advisory that your child is in orders food from an outside restaurant, which somehow we still are allowed to do, even though we've not been able to get many other food in the building now with allergies, which is okay. But they go Chick-fil-A, they do Five Guys, they do different restaurants like that, and so once a quarter they order. And for us, where we don't have a full kitchen, we do have the hot lunch program. It's nice to get, the kids like the not so healthy food, as do the teachers, as do I sometimes. And so that's a fun thing we do. And then we have community meeting continues on Wednesdays with the advisory lunch activity. The other change, which isn't on here, is service learning. So we do more service learning in 7th and 8th grade. In 7th grade, they go out to Wider Circle, which is a great organization. If you don't know about it, Silver Spring, it's a warehouse there. The kids go twice a year to the warehouse. They work, and usually in the basement, to organize. They bring up the materials. They then sometimes work with the customers, help them find, it's belongings, it's furniture, it's lots of things. And then we're tying in this year, which I'm really happy about, some of why the organization exists and the needs for it into our curriculum, so kids can understand a little bit more about what they're doing. It's not just volunteering, it's a little bit more of a wraparound. And then 8th grade, we go to Martha's Table, which is great. We go to DC, we take the metro, which is exciting for some kids and probably a life experience they need. And then we work there in their kitchen usually, sometimes in their clothing store, and it's a lot of cutting and dicing and like stuff that some kids have done, some kids haven't. So it's more opportunities to do that at kind of a higher level. They can think a little bit more about the world where they're at.
Do they have the same SSL requirements as like the public?
No, there's no requirements at all in middle school here. So
but what about for high school?
High school has 40 hours over the 4 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that starts, and none of this stuff will count. I'm sorry.
Right, well, yeah.
But it starts in the summer after 8th grade. So like if you want to start thinking about hours for upper school, you can start doing that after 8th grade ends.
And that's just like once or twice a year?
So twice a year they'll go out to do this, and then once a quarter we do sandwiches here, which is 5th and 6th do now, which also goes to Martha's Table. I guess the difference is 5th and 6th do sandwiches, 7th and 8th do the cutting for vegetables and stuff as well. We have to be a little bit more careful with it with 5th and 6th we found. And 7th and 8th you have to be careful too with knives. But we do carrots and celery and things like that. So they'll do that once a quarter, so 4 times a year, and then twice a year to get out of the building to go to the Wider Circle of Martha's Table.
We have our service day.
And then the service day in April, yeah.
The entire school.
That's which started last year, or I guess we've done it 2 years. It's the 3rd annual service day. And so the service day, if you don't know about it, you'll know more. I mean, you're new, so but it's out for a whole day. It's usually cross grade, so we'll have 6th match with 10th, which is awesome for our middle schoolers to be around like a little more mature kids. And then we'll go to different places and help. We go to the place that does bikes around the world and helps get bicycles to places in Africa, things like that. There's a great one. What's the one in 5th grade does? It's
Sports.
The sports. What is the name
Sports
of it?
equipment. Play it? No.
Yeah, play it again.
Play It Again, which is a former McLean alum who's basically refurbishing sports equipment to people who don't need it as much, and kids work there in their warehouse. I went to a horse farm last year. This was awesome, which was, Robbie was there too, but it was like horses that people adopted that ended up not being cared for, which is like, I didn't know it was a thing. It was really
Is
sad.
that Poplar Spring?
Pardon?
Is that Poplar Spring?
I don't know. No, I don't think so. It was Days End Horse Farm. It was up off 270. it was a great experience. It was like really, it was illuminating for me just having known nothing about it. So it's a good day. We're trying to get the students more.
And it was level the playing field. It was
Leveling the playing
Leveling
field.
the
Thank you.
playing
That's a
field.
cool
Thank
place.
you.
And the other thing which your student or your child may be interested in is we have an optional spring break trip in 7th and 8th grade. This year we're going to the Galapagos Islands, which Jenny's helping to facilitate. First time ever to the Galapagos for probably most of the kids, certainly for McLean. Usually we've gone Italy and Greece, so we may go back and forth. We've never done Galapagos before, but there was an interest, and I think we have about a dozen kids signed up, which is awesome. So next year, if you're interested, we'd probably be back to Italy and Greece, but who knows, there'll be a trip, which might be fun for your child.
So do the kids just go with
Chaperones from school.
chaperones, like teachers and?
Yeah.
2 to 3 teachers go with them.
Yeah, it's fun. So one of the changes is they'll have a choice, which you'll also get in the spring, of electives. So right now, there's not really a choice. You do have a choice in music for your child, but they take art, they take technology, they take music. They'll be required to still take a music and an art. They'll be asked to do a semester of each. But if you look back on that schedule, there's 2 periods a day they do electives. It's elective 7 and elective 7. So 2 periods a day. Next year as well, they'll have electives. They'll choose each semester what they want to do. We have 4 options for music. So right now, these are the 3 of the options that your child has, which is strings, chorus, and guitar. And then we add band into it, which is during the before lunch elective time. It's with 8th grade. And we try to make it a full band with percussion, not strings, the saxophones, trombone, things like that. It depends on the skill level of the kids' horns. Yes. A couple of art courses for kids to choose from: artist personal expression and inspiration artwork. Computer graphics is also an art option, although sort of a different type of course because it's digital. And then robotics, which is very popular. We have a competition in January. It's actually like a team with an after-school commitment. Most 7th graders do it in the spring because in the fall it's more of the 8th graders do it just because you have to have a little bit of background in it before you can go and compete. But if your child's interested and has a talent in it, we can get them in the first semester. And then study hall is pretty popular as well. Study hall is sort of what you might imagine. It's 40 minutes a day. It's teacher-led. But unlike study halls from my past, it's very structured. It's a lot of support. It's the teacher moving around, checking with each kid, going over planners. Sometimes setting up expectations for how to get homework done, prioritizing some of the executive functioning support. So a lot of kids like to take this. There's pros and cons to taking it. The pro is that you get more homework done and you should get a lot more support, which is a huge pro. The con a little bit is just that as you get older in 8th grade, I start to advise parents, unless they absolutely need it, to try to avoid it, unless you need it at home. But the upper school, you won't have that as much. And so sometimes kids finish 8th and they've got the study hall and they're going home with a half an hour of homework at night, which is great. Then they get to upper school, they don't have the study hall, and they go home with an hour and a half to 2 hours a night, and it's a pretty big jump for kids. And so not as much of a concern for 7th grade, but as you get into 8th, we'll talk about that with some of you if you want. But there's pros and cons to having that just from a workload perspective and getting ready for a more rigorous upper school environment.
Study hall is not an elective in high school.
It is, but rarely is it taken by kids just because of the way the structure is set up. Some kids do take it. It's managed. It's about managing your 4 years and how you want to think through where you want to take stuff and where your time should be. Kids do take it. It's just less common. They only have 7 periods a day up there. They're longer. So you take a study hall. You're taking out an academic class potentially in an elective. So I would know more, but I don't know well enough. But they can tell you more. And athletics will continue. A lot of your children have played athletics last year, might play this year. Some teams are 5 through 8, as you might know. But there also are 7-8 teams, which are a little more competitive. They practice once more per week. They have more games. In the fall, you may know we have girls and boys soccer, volleyball for the girls, 7-8 versus the 5-6. Cross country is 5 through 8. You may not know, but each season there's both an individual sport and a team sport. So if you would prefer to just run by yourself, kind of, although with team, cross country, wrestling, track and field. Winter is very big for sports. We definitely have 7-8 teams for basketball. They're very crowded in 5-6. They're very crowded in 7-8. But they're also competitive. As you can see, we won the girls volleyball last year. Basketball, we had won the girls for 3 years in a row up until the year before last. So it's good. In the spring, lacrosse for boys, softball for girls, and track and field. So again, sport's still a large part of the program. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Jenny, talk about the transition from 6 to 7, and we'll take questions.
Thanks for coming today. It's really helpful to have the opportunity to talk to you guys before the transition begins. So one thing to keep in mind is that we will take your kids through this journey of transitioning slowly so that hopefully there's not a big jump. when we change from the 5-6 model to the 7-8 model, there's obviously, we go from more of a general homeroom base model where the teachers are obviously with your children a lot more, and we move to the advisory model where they, and departmentalized instruction, so they're with teachers for 40 minutes a day. So it is going to feel different. It's going to feel differently for you, and it's going to feel differently for them. But we slowly take, so there's 2 transition times. One is 4th quarter in 6th grade, and then the other one is 1st quarter of 7th grade. So I'm going to take you through each one. The first one is obviously 4th quarter, 6th grade. So they have desks right now as you've been in their rooms, and they have slots to put their books and materials. So what we're going to do when they come back for 4th quarter is we turn those desks around. So they still have the desks, the room still looks the same, but they no longer can use that as their main, repository for all of their stuff. We push them more towards the lockers, so it begins to look and feel a little bit more like 7th grade. 7th grade, they go to their lockers in between classes, usually every 2 periods they go back to their locker. They'll return what they're finished with and pick up materials for the next few classes. So we're gonna start to adjust them to that. And it's relatively seamless, frankly. They're kind of ready for the idea to feel a little bit more in control, feel a little older, and they like going out in the hallway a little more often to go to their locker. But ultimately, we're really trying to work on that executive functioning skill set of what do you need in this class? Are you prepared for it? Are you checking to make sure you have all of your materials? So we slowly start to work into that. Many of you get a weekly folder or a daily folder of announcements or flyers or things like that. We phase that out. So in 4th quarter, you're no longer your kids aren't gonna have that folder that comes home once a week with all of the communication. What we're trying to build there is a sense of responsibility on their part to help bridge the gap between school and home. So what do I need, to have them start thinking, what do I need to have my parents know about what's going on at school, okay? Don't worry, you can still email the teachers are still gonna be emailing you, but it's a chance for them to take on some of that responsibility. We also phase out the monthly newsletters, and that's a little bit to train you more than it is to train the kids, right? And that is to say, as Mr. Roth talked about, we begin to rely heavily on the portal for communication in 7th and 8th. So we're really hoping that they step up to communicate and email their teachers back and forth, but we also ask you guys to be a little more involved in going and checking what each of these individual teachers are doing, what your child is responsible for during those class times. So that's your transition piece a little bit there. The biggest thing that we hear about the transition is it's more work. There's more work during the day, and there's more work for homework. So what we do is we start to increase that homework load that your kids are having. It's not a huge increase, but you're gonna notice it's probably another 15, 20, sometimes 30 minutes at a time that's gonna increase in the 4th quarter. So it's again, gradually increasing that amount of work so that it does not feel so overwhelming to them in the 1st quarter of 7th. So then, here we go. We get into our projects in 4th quarter with 6th grade. So we have more long-term projects in both English classes, history, science, things like that. And so we're working on time management for them, chunking things, making sure that they understand that there's this big, long assignment that's due a month from now. Oh, I don't need to work on it right now. I can work on it next week or next week. So we start to teach them that setting deadlines for themselves or mapping out little due dates is a way to keep anxiety down, but also to manage the workload, right? So our teachers they're gonna provide the structure for that, and the kids will naturally go through that without necessarily realizing that they're learning these time management skills. Okay, so fast forward, we are in 1st quarter of 7th grade. Your child's been given an advisory, and what do we do before your kids even get here? So in June, we meet with the 6th and 7th grade staff along with our support staff. We meet together and we talk about your children. We talk about the strengths that they have first, and then we work on the areas that they're still trying to refine, they're still trying to get better at. We talk not only about academics, but we talk about social emotional standing. We also talk about level of communication with parents, because that's very important. So we're really passing that baton to them, but in a really in-depth way. It's an internal document that we add to regularly. And then we meet with them again when we get into 7th grade, just to make sure that nothing is lost from June to August or September. And sometimes things change. We have meetings with you all that say, over the summer we've been working on math, and I want you to know that we might need less accommodations in that area, or we're really, struggling, and this came up over the summer. Can you please, let the teachers be aware of that? So we work really hard on our communication to bridge that gap. Again, we gradually increase homework. So the first quarter is going to feel a little bit like review and reinforcement. Your child may come home and be like, gosh, that's a little easy. Like, when are we going to start to really learn something? Don't worry. By the end of first quarter, it's going to feel a little bit different. But the teachers work very hard together. The 6th grade teachers and the 7th grade teachers work really hard together to take your kids where they finish in 6th and pick them back up where they are in 7th. So as I mentioned briefly, we moved to an advisory model. So no longer is there the homeroom model where your child comes and goes out of that one room. So they meet in the morning and in the afternoon with their advisor. The advisor is at the helm of their ship while they're here. It's your first point of contact, just like the homeroom teacher. That being said, the advisor's job switches slightly. So the advisor's job is to make sure that they're on top of their work, and that they are really working on the soft skills, right? So the social emotional learning, are they working through being a good community member? And then finally, they're working on executive functioning. So we have a whole program that gets pushed in the morning. Every single day is slightly different. So, Mondays they may do backpacks again. It's very similar to the resource period that they currently have in 6th, but it's not a 40-minute block of time. It's now pushed down to a 20-minute block of time. And in that 20-minute block of time, we have Good Morning McLean, which is this is going to be something new to you all. It's our advisory program. Every morning there's prompts that they go through. It's built to foster community, a sense of awareness of what's going on around you, that you are part of something larger than yourself. Miss Love, who's our coordinator of social emotional learning, she puts these together in conjunction with the teachers. So they're getting some way to ground them, bring them into the community, and then work on preparing and getting them ready for the day or the week. We move from 1 binder to 3 binders in 7th grade. We chunk those binders so that it's usually their first and second period of the day, third and fourth, and then the afternoon. So that within that binder, there's a very set tabs. So it's like classwork, tests, notes, things of that nature. So we're teaching them another type of organizational system. So hopefully by the time they get to high school, they've been exposed to a few different types of organizational systems, and then they can pick which one works best for them. But we help them set that binder system up. We reinforce it as to the times they go to their locker to drop off, and it's all color-coded, so you'll be able to know that too. We take that on as something that we do with them. Daily advisory check-ins. So obviously the advisors at, steering this ship. And so they're going to check in, they're going to make sure that your child is checking the portal, that they know what assignments they have outstanding, that they have the materials that they need for it. And then circling back, if there is a challenge, they're going to help make a plan to make sure that your child is successful. I spoke a little bit briefly about Good Morning McLean. This replaces the responsive classroom morning meeting, basically. So it's time to come together. Also, you should know that the ratios in advisory have been slightly less than it is in the current homerooms. So some of our advisories only have 8 students in them. So that's a nice low ratio for the kids, especially starting out in 7th grade with the increased expectations. We move away from the iPad and we go into a Chromebook. The reason we do this is it's more developmentally appropriate for them. They're going to be utilizing that Chromebook in every class that they have. We need to work on their typing skills so that they're more proficient and more fluent with that. It's also the programs and the apps are more developmentally appropriate for the type of work that they're doing in 7th and 8th than some of them that we use in 5 and 6. So as you can tell, we kind of put a ladder between our 2 fish bowls, right? Your children generally make this transition very seamlessly. That being said, I think that workload is one that you will see as something that is an adjustment, but it's not necessarily a negative. By the time they get to the end of 6th grade, they're ready for a little bit more. We dive deeper into content areas. They get a chance to be with more than just 1 or 2 teachers in a day, which frankly, I think they like. They enjoy the opportunity to get to know other staff members in different ways. And as we go through this journey with them, obviously you're on board too. So we're available for you to give us insight, for you to give us input, to let us know what concerns you have. But overall, it is a pretty seamless transition that we have experienced previously. And the basic supports and basic structures are still in place in 7th grade. Did I get it, Roth?
Sound good to me?
Okay. So, we are at the time now for questions, 'cause